your when we were more than flyover country leader fan radio network.
Okay.
And KFAN.com. 2 minutes and 45 seconds past the hour, 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. We welcome you back to the Thursday afternoon Aardvark edition. We will be here as usual until 6:30 tonight. Power Pack broadcast, give you details on our guest lineup. Presently, I will get ahead of it regarding the inbox. Dr. Dan's inbox is scheduled for a 5:30 departure today, or arrival, depending on how you want to look at it. Email guardsjg at KFAN.com. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line will be rebooted as soon as Hip Cricket comes through for me. 64686. What year were you born?
1982.
You'd have no recollection of this then. You'd have no chance to have any recollection of this because the single date, and it's today, August 13th, that we were less flyover country than we ever were before or ever have been since, took place on this date.
Really?
In the year 1973. Do you have any idea what I might be referring to?
I don't. I don't think I do.
Well, on that date, we made the cover.
Oh, I got you now.
Of Time magazine.
Yeah, we like it here. It's nice here.
Well, no, it was the rest of the country saying, we like it there even if we've never been there.
Mm-hmm.
On the cover, Governor Wendell Anderson. In fact, I think he had a big fish. I don't know if he actually caught it. Big smile on his face. Here's your headline. Minnesota, a state that works. Now, clearly this was pre-Feeding Our Future. But again, it's 1973. Let me read you just the lead. Tell me you wouldn't have been proud if you had been alive in 1973. On an August Saturday afternoon, the scene is a slice of America's Norman Rockwell past. Barefoot children play one old cat and race their wagons down gently sloping sidewalks under the overhanging oaks. Their fathers labor with hand mowers and rakes. On one lawn up the street, a rummage sale is in progress. Station wagons laden with children, groceries, dogs, and camping equipment, and trailing boats slide out of driveways, heading north for where, Guardsy? A week or two at the lake. It could as well be Little Rock, Arkansas, or Great Harrington, Massachusetts, or even Portland, Oregon. For the nation is in its easier summer rhythms. But the setting is the north side of Minneapolis, in Minnesota, a state where the Rockwell vision pertains with a special consistency. If the American good life has anywhere survived in some intelligent equilibrium, it may be in Minnesota. I mean, if you're running the Chamber of Commerce, if you're in charge of media relations for the state,
it's as good as it gets.
I mean, does it get? You can't pay for flowery writing that positive about the great state of Minnesota. It's a state where a residual American secret still seems to operate. Some of the nation's more agreeable qualities are evident there. Courtesy, fairness, honesty. Well, again, this is pre-Feeding Our Future. A capacity for innovation, hard work, intellectual adventure, and wait for it, responsibility. The land is large, 84,068 square miles. The population small, just under 4 million. Nature is close, 20 minutes from a downtown Minneapolis office building to a country lake, and generally well protected. Politics, almost unnaturally clean. No patronage, virtually no corruption. Cities, or I should say citizens, well educated. High school dropout rate, 7.6%, the nation's lowest. Minnesotans are remarkably civil. Crime rate, third lowest in the nation after, can you name the other two states?
I can't.
Iowa and Maine.
Okay.
By a combination of political and cultural tradition, geography, and sheer luck, Minnesota nurtures an extraordinarily successful society. Now, I'm not going to read it all because it's lengthy, but Dan Minnesota reminded me, I think we've alluded to this story before, this cover, but I don't think we've talked about it in as much depth. I mean, that's not flyover country, or that's an assertion that it should be more than flyover country, even if you don't know anything about or spend any time in the state of Minnesota. Now, here's the kicker I wanted to get to. They have as testimony a number of quote-unquote Minnesotans.
Ones of us's.
And I'm trying to figure out how many of these individuals are still with us and still local. There may be relatives listening. Here's the Minnesotans in this Time magazine cover piece, August 13, 1973, who concur with the magazine writer's view of what an idyllic place Minnesota is. An orthodontist named Richard Paulson, who was 39 years old then, living in the Minneapolis suburb of Golden Valley. Once upon a time, Golden Valley was considered a suburb. Right? Now it's preposterous to think that way, but that's what it was back then, right? We weren't as spread out as we have become. The Paulsons, Richard Paulson and his wife Betty Ann, have not missed a show at the Guthrie since it opened in 1963.
Wow. How
about Chuck Ruhr, R-U-H-R, 36, owner of a Minneapolis ad agency? He, by the way, I'm trying to figure out where he lived then. It looks like, doesn't really say, other than he can be sometimes sitting on his pontoon boat in the middle of White Bear Lake.
Okay.
Arlene Coulis, 24, migrated to Minneapolis from Chicago 7 years ago. She swears about it. She loves it. Blaine Harstead, 44, a Minneapolis lawyer. Wonder if Rosenbaum knew him. I wonder if those individuals and others who are featured, I hope they're still around doing well. And there's a bunch of other ones named. It is a big complaint here that we're ignored too much and people don't understand us and they don't give us enough credit or they just don't give us our proper due. Time magazine did on that occasion. Now, Minnesota claimed when he sent me a reminder of this, he does mention, here's the historical nugget. Wendell Anderson, the governor, cover photo of that piece was drafted by the Fighting Saints.
Really?
Yeah, apparently a hell of a hockey player.
I didn't know. Well, he had to have been. Yeah, he's one of us.
Now, even Minnesota said, I think it should have been retitled We Like It Here. But the difference is, I don't think the writer was one of us. So I don't think we have to be as defensive about it. And then I would also say that whoever came up with the sign that they put in the old Metrodome, that very defensive We Like It Here sign, do you think there's a chance that sign would never have been erected if that person had read this Time magazine cover story first from 1973? Because I don't think there's nothing to be defensive about after you read this story. You think they do like us. We don't really need to be validated or get on the defensive when people take shots at us, because Time magazine basically said we're the best place in America.
I'd love to know, like in doctors' offices in like New York and
Yes.
Los Angeles, if people read that.
I agree.
And what they thought of it. If it was any kind of conversation.
Well, here's the kicker, and I know Minnesota's trying to get me going on this too, that somewhere he read that some consider that cover of the magazine, that cover photo with that headline, the worst cover in the history of Time magazine.
Wow. Well, that's fighting words.
And that would prompt a We Like It.
Yes, it would.
But how do you determine, who said that? I mean, was there a poll, a survey?
Who gets to decide?
And was that because it was about Minnesota, the frozen tundra of the Midwest? I don't know. I may read some more nuggets from this thing. There's some really interesting stuff here. Now, again, they do mention, just for the record, Minnesota has its drawbacks. Among them, its winters are as hard as the Ice Age. And in the summers, mosquitoes often seem half the size of dive bombers.
So they try to be fair and balanced.
That and unemployment outside the Twin Cities is troublesome. So personal income taxes are the highest in the nation.
Yeah.
I think Louis would...
I was just going to say, that's right. And they're getting worse.
Would confirm that, for sure. Duluth residents worry about possible carcinogenic asbestos particles in their drinking water. Some argue that Minnesota works a bit too well and too blandly, that its comparatively open and serene population is a decade or two behind the rest of the U.S. Place lacks the fire, urgency, and self-accusation of states with massive urban centers and problems. Well, I think we've caught up there, unfortunately, for better or for worse.
We're back. Yeah, Time Magazine could come back.
In that regard. So, yeah, there's some really good dated nuggets, but you got to remember when this was written. Like I said, 1973. I'm going to try to retweet the Minnesota tweet, which I think gives you access to at least the cover. He got a hold of the story and sent me the entire story. Here's another, I think, fascinating sidebar that I was unaware of. And it's Dayton related. The leading family in both, let me back up. Even more important than corporate giving is personal fundraising. Fund drives currently underway or about to begin in the Twin Cities amount to a staggering $300 million, of which $136 million has already been raised. Business effort is twofold. One for cultural activities, one for social and civic affairs. The leading family in both, the Daytons. 5 brothers who are dominant stockholders in the Dayton Hudson Corp., which last year rang up $1.4 billion in retail sales. And again, this is in 1973. You do the math on that. As downtown Minneapolis was deteriorating in the 50s, did you know that?
I did not.
I didn't either. The Daytons elected to keep their huge department store there rather than move it to the burbs. Cooperating with the city, they turned Nicollet Avenue into a shopping mall and built a system of skyways linking the buildings along the street. The project has stimulated more than $200 million in new downtown construction. God, wouldn't it be wonderful if that could be repeated?
It'd be great.
I think the world's a little different. It's probably unlikely that it can be done again. The new 51-story IDS Tower, tallest and most distinguished building between Chicago and San Francisco. At least it was back then. So
we had our moment.
We did. Text me. Some of you may be old enough to remember that piece. How much were you bursting with pride, or did you find it almost too patronizing? Patting, because that's the other thing we worry about. Oh, you're patting us on the head like we're cute.
Yeah.
We're happy for you. We don't need that.
So it looks like one of the people that was quoted has passed away, the orthodontist.
Sorry to hear that. Okay.
I think Arlene Coulis might still be with us.
Really?
Chuck Ruhr, as of 2023, when Fox 9 did a look back on that story, was still alive. How about his last quote? I don't know if you got to this one. His last quote in the Time story, Chuck Ruhr, who was an advertising guy.
Okay.
California is a flashy blonde you want to take out once or twice. Minnesota is the girl you want to marry.
There it is. There it is.
It's not as catchy as the Prince quote.
No, definitely
Anthony
not.
Edwards says it, but
yeah, that's very true.
Asked if he'd still marry Minnesota, Ruhr didn't hesitate. This is from Fox. Yes, it's a different place. It's a different girl now, but I still would.
Mm. Well, I'd love for some text to come in. In fact, they're already pouring in. 64686. Like anything, even this is polarizing and political.
Not surprising.
Example, Dan, what a great place to grow up. I was 11 in 1973. What a magical time. And then the liberals took over. And then the liberals took over. Just saying. There it is.
Couldn't wait to get that one out.
Yeah, well, but wasn't it pretty liberal politically then already? Relatively speaking? Who knows? We've got some good historians, either amateur or professional, that we might quote and refer to. And there, like I said, there's a lot of interesting texts coming in. 64686, Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. Inbox at 5:30 tonight. Bottom of the hour, Paul Blume. Fox 9's Paul Blume joins he has been reporting on that horrific story out of Hopkins, Minnesota from yesterday, in which we're getting, via authorities, a lot more detail about what went down and apparently why it went down. And the 4 o'clock hour will be an in-studio visit, kind of an exit interview in a sense, for Chris Hine, who has covered the Minnesota Timberwolves for the Star-Tribune for ages, and announced a few weeks ago that he's headed back a little closer to home to join NBA coverage at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it's a very esteemed historic newspaper. So he goes from interesting team. He goes from covering Anthony to LeBron. That's not a bad second gig, covering an NBA team that will be obviously the center of the basketball universe, especially if they do as well as some have predicted.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barreiro on The Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY traffic center.
Teachers give so much. Now it's our turn to give back with iHeartRadio's Thank a Teacher, powered by Donors Choose. Nominate an outstanding public school teacher who goes above and beyond for students. They could win $5,000 for classroom supplies and resources. Nominate now at iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
NBA schedule released in its entirety. Some of you may be aware of some parts of it affecting your favorite local professional basketball team. I'm sure that'll be part of the discussion with Chris Hine when he joins us in studio at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. I think we're prominent. We're down, I think, 2 or 3 games from a year ago. Although last year we ended up having a couple added, because sometimes you do get, depending on other teams going by the wayside, you can get games added. Sometimes you get games subtracted. But we're still in the upper 20s, I think.
27 nationally televised games.
Yeah, and that includes MLK Day. We're in New York, right?
Yes.
To face Cat and the Knicks.
The defending
unless
champs.
Cat's holding out. Although that'd be a long holdout if he was still holding out in Feb.
Probably.
And is there another holiday where we got a New Year's Eve game? I know that.
We do, yeah, against Denver.
Yeah, so we got a Christmas game. The New Year's Eve game is road, right? Or is it here?
No, it's home.
It's also home. So we're on Christmas Day or night and New Year's Eve night.
Yeah, and it's a 3 o'clock game, which is nice.
Oh, even better.
Get it out of the way.
That's even better. I don't want to break it down like we do the NFL schedule because it's a little longer. But anything else jump out at you regarding the national aspect of it?
I mean, I think it's, depending on which count you're going with, it's 1 or 2 games fewer than a year ago. They still have, a ton of national TV games, which is cool. What has gotten a lot of people's attention is they have an 8-game homestand in November. Basically, right out of the gate. They're on the road for, looks like 6 of the first 10 or so, and then starting November 8th, they're home until November 23rd. It's basically 2 straight weeks of basketball at the House of Pain in the Den, Target Center. So you'd like to think they could use that to give themselves a little bit of momentum. Because they're not playing great teams. Obviously, they got the Knicks in there, but
we're also, how badly do we want the cup? The Commissioner's Cup? Because,
I want it.
We've got one in the prelims. We got OKC, I grant, but the other 3 are extremely winnable games.
Yeah.
Are they not?
Yes. Clippers, the Pelicans, and the Grizzlies.
Memphis, right? Yeah.
Yes. We've had Oklahoma City at least one time in the Emirates Cup bid.
That's true.
And I think this year more than most, the players are going to be motivated to get to the Cup because if you recall, they moved the final games from Las Vegas to Indy. So most teams, in a sense, it might be harder.
That's true.
Because
much to your chagrin.
More teams might be motivated to get there. Indy in December, Indy anytime as we know, but especially in December is magical. So
they want the cocktail sauce, man.
It might be even more difficult.
I mean, it's you want to be able to sit down the night before that game.
That's right.
And get that jumbo shrimp cocktail with the best sauce ever made.
Yeah,
the shrimp cocktail
in the frozen tundra of Indy.
That's correct.
That'd be great. So we'll see.
Who won the Cup last year?
Did the Knicks win it?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
How'd that turn out for them?
Pretty good. Pretty well.
That's a good sweep.
Yeah.
It's not bad at all, isn't it?
It was a good season for them.
A lot of good text coming in. Oh, but the biggest repeat text so far is bitterness that in the picture, the governor on the cover is not holding up a captured walleye.
My God.
And apparently at the time there was some bitterness too.
Of course there was.
Because we're supposed to be walleye, correct?
Yeah, apparently.
I think it was a northern pike.
Okay.
I don't know that
we have those too.
That's what I'm confused by. Was
Especially
that big of a deal? To a number of people, even now, it is.
It's bothering them.
It's bothering them.
53 years later.
53 years later. That's a long time.
But that's us. That's Minnesota. We hold a grudge.
Dan, I think, this is from Todd, many lump liberals with progressives. I don't believe liberals have created a downward societal spiral. I believe the progressive movement has. However, both reside under the Democratic platform, so I think it becomes a guilt by association scenario. Much like MAGA versus conservatives, they're both under the Republican platform. They're not necessarily synonymous. I dream of a place that doesn't exist, one where conversations happen along with give and take versus take exclusive agendas. I disagree with many who oppose my beliefs, but I don't oppose the people. I oppose their beliefs, and I believe that's healthy. Well stated.
He's thinking about Tolosa.
That's
a place that doesn't exist.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, but he exists.
He does.
So maybe
there's hope.
I want to say it's going to take more than one, but there are people who think that way. Now, they may get overwhelmed, but they think that way. Dan, Minnesotans were liberal back then. Liberalism and conservatism have morphed into something we wouldn't recognize. There's a huge difference between liberalism and progressivism. I certainly agree with that. Thanks for reviewing the Life magazine cover and article. I was 13. My dad was just completing his first of 4 terms in the Minnesota legislature. The soda guy hit it. 73 was conservative and liberal. They worked together. Most all legislators were native Minnesota. Now with a former governor from Nebraska and an Attorney General from Detroit. Yikes, we need a return to actual leaders. Go USA and Minnesota. Did your listeners never hear about something called the New Deal? I guess Humphrey and Gene McCarthy weren't liberals. Huh. Who knew? He struck a nerve. I'm not surprised that it indeed would. Born in Waconia in 70, raised in Wayzata, raised my family in Edina. It's always been tax hell and political. However, he writes, membership has its privileges. Huh. Interesting. Dry heat guy. I worked for USA Minnesota Hockey. We did a story about Wendell Anderson around 2004. He was still playing beer league hockey in Hopkins in his 80s.
Love it.
And he invited me out for a beer with his team after the game. Very nice guy.
Wonder where they went. A lot of good options in Hopkins.
Liberals in 73 aren't even the same as liberals today. Don't get me wrong. Those from 1973 still exist, but the party has gone in a bad direction. Just ask Bill Maher. Dan, my uncle Bud Eugene was a Minnesota state senator and lifelong DFLer. He was also the DNR commissioner for a term or two under Pawlenty, of all governors. Bad take by the liberals took over guy. The difference is we used to be bipartisan, got a lot more done. Sadly, I think those days are gone. Well, we touched on that with a lot of politicians, including Governor Arnie Carlson, some national as well, on that very issue about horse trading being done, about at least negotiations going on. And it's like people can't even sit necessarily in the same room any longer. I remember that cover well. I was 12. My father got Time magazine every week. We were very proud of the cover, though I thought the Northern was a little bit on a smaller side. My parents were Republicans at the time, but they did respect Wendell Anderson. I think everyone else did in the state. Any corn sweat mention from Time magazine in 1973? Good question. I'll look through the rest of the story. Let's get a pause, bottom of the hour break. Let's hit the A section hard. And in this case, it's a horrifically tragic story that broke yesterday out of Hopkins, Minnesota. Paul Blume has been covering that story all day. He's going to give us the very latest when we return.
You're listening to Barreiro on The Fan.
Download. dead in what is being described by law enforcement authorities as a murder-suicide that took place yesterday, largely in Hopkins, although there is a Burnsville component to this story as well. And the individual responsible has been identified as Nathan Matthew Brown, 41 years old. Paul Blume, Fox 9, has been on this story pretty much all day and is going to give us the very latest, and including, I think, what he has learned and what a number of people have learned via the search warrant about sort of the backdrop to this case or what might have led to this horrific event. And Blume joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Welcome back to the show, sir. We appreciate the time. Before we get to some stuff in the warrant, well, then maybe it's all connected. What do we know about Nathan Matthew Brown at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it does come from the warrant. Reporters here at Fox 9 obviously digging into this. And I was at the courthouse yesterday once we got word on the identity of who was involved. And I think you set the stage well for this. Domestic murder, suicide. We understand, killed his mother in Burnsville. Fatal stabbing in Burnsville earlier in the day. He comes back to the house. At one point, police said he had been living with his mother, but that he came back to the house that he owns, that he'd lived with a wife and a 7-year-old wife, an in-home daycare provider. She had her own business there. And accused of stabbing them to death, the wife and daughter, in front of other children. With a screwdriver. But yeah, Nathan Brown, we went digging on him. Very little at this point. I was in the courts yesterday running his name, seeing, are there divorce papers pending? Are there, restraining orders? Does he have a criminal history, violation orders? Nothing, Dan. The only thing I found on this guy goes back 10 plus years, and it's like a DNR violation for fishing without a license and a snowmobiling violation for, not staying on a trail or something. But otherwise, we know nothing about him. We understand from this warrant now that his wife, Kristen, who owned the daycare, Brown Bear daycare, maybe about 10 kids, licensed for 10 kids in her home in Hopkins, that she had started telling families. She sent out a newsletter that said in the coming days, we understand it was the end of the month, that she was going to close her in-home care business because of issues with the relationship. But that's really all we have at this point. We're hearing a little bit, nothing officially on the record, but I know our reporters have been in touch with some loved ones of Kristen, the wife who was killed, learning a little bit more about her. But in terms of Nathan, we're still digging. We don't know where this came from. What happened in his life, what prompted this. We still just don't see a motive even in this sort of first court documentation that was filed late yesterday and that I got my hands on this morning.
Nathan Brown, I believe, found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That was on an upper floor in the same house, right? While his wife, their daughter, were found fatally stabbed in the lower level. That's my understanding. Yeah. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, that's how the documentation reads, and then that's what we were told by authorities yesterday at a news conference at 4:00 yesterday afternoon. But yeah, he's basically, I mean, one of the customers, one of Kristen's, customers arrives. Right. He's a parent, a dad. Yeah. He's got 2 kids with him. He hears some screaming down in the basement from children, but he walks into the home and sees the incident unfolding. Like there's this element of he actually, the report says, and I do want to be, caution people that it is an investigative document, a search warrant. And then I know Hopkins police earlier this is like in the last hour or so sent out a bulletin to be careful, media, what you report out of these documents. It's investigatory. So, but I do feel comfortable sharing this. But he walks in, this parent, 2 kids in tow. He actually looks over and sees sort of what he believes is the husband, Nathan, performing CPR on his wife on the floor. Like he thinks he's walked into like an emergency in that sense. And then there's sort of this accounting that then he realizes there's a a screwdriver in his hand, and that he witnesses both the stabbing of the wife and then the child lying kind of right next to her mother. I mean, a 7-year-old daughter. It's hard for me to kind of describe these details. I know it's difficult, and I certainly don't want to be overly gory or anything to your listeners, but it is what happened, and we don't know, and there's no motive contained, within the documents we're getting or what we're hearing from sources at this point. I note in the search warrant, it says they took a handwritten note from Nathan's duffel bag. He also had several guns with him. He is eventually found upstairs. Police go in through the home, combing through, seeing if there are other victims in the house. They find him with a shotgun in a closet and then believe he killed himself upstairs soon after the attack. But just an awful story contained, within this one family. But you think about the 6 other kids who were in there, the guns taken from a bag that we believe belonged to Nathan, and then what could have been even worse, the kids who were in that home at that time. But clearly he spared their lives, and it's just awful.
To walk in, as you mentioned, the parent who arrived to the daycare at 9:05 to drop off his children, and then he goes to the back of the residence, which I guess is the normal drop-off procedure, hears the screaming, and then walks in on what you say he walks in on. I think grabs his kid and his children and 2 other children, and then leaves the home and calls 911. To walk obviously into something like that, I can't even imagine the vision that you're going to have a very difficult time getting out of your head.
Yeah. But though to have the wherewithal, I don't, again, the details, it's hard. I wasn't at the house yesterday, so I don't quite understand the layout, but I know the basement is used for care of these kids, described, by one witness, between 1 and 4 years old. So some pretty young, I guess you'd probably call them toddlers, type. Obviously the 7-year-old daughter was in the house and, was a senseless victim of what took place. But for that parent to have the wherewithal first, just the description that he first thought, there was a sort of emergency situation underway, that, there was a life-saving effort by the husband, to then realize, oh my God, this attack, and to have the wherewithal, I don't know where he grabs the 2 other kids besides himself, right, but shepherds them outside. Quite a remarkable story there. But yeah, today, it's digging. It's trying to understand what happened, what took place. Clearly, the relationship, at least publicly, was on the rocks. It was going to cost. I mean, this woman, Kristen Brown, who had this daycare, she's had it in her home for 6 years in Hopkins. We've gone through, inspection records from the state, the county. It's an in-home daycare provider, so she's inspected every year. Not a blemish on the record that we could find in terms of any problems at that home in terms of the business. Clearly, she had half a dozen children there, licensed for up to 10. It was active yesterday. She had acknowledged troubles in the relationship, and then this was going to bring a close to her, 6-year, career. And, you can read some social media posts from her, before her death, that she loved what she did. She did it. She had her own daughter, that it meant so much. And then, to have this happen, it's just beyond comprehension. And then you just, you would hope at some point, perhaps, Nathan would have left a note, they took his cell phones, perhaps something would indicate what made him snap the way he did yesterday.
So as we understand it, or as authorities are laying it out, the first victim was his mother, 78-year-old Alice Ann Brown. This is in her home in Burnsville. So I'm sure that's going to be part of the investigation here. Has he said something to her about his intention, about whatever has snapped in him, and she is trying to, convince him not to do something like that? I guess that's going to be almost impossible to know under these conditions, but that's where this whole thing began, correct, in Burnsville?
Yeah, that's where it began. We did learn from authorities yesterday that's where he had been staying. I do think that's, you yes. kind of start combining facts that, okay, she alerted, she had, he's the listed owner of a house, not saying, spousal relationship, what have you. His name's on the house. He owns the house that she has her daycare in. She tells folks that she's ending her daycare.
Yep.
Was there an element of, move out coming with the house? I don't know, but authorities said he was staying with his elderly family member, who we now know is a mother, down in Burnsville. And yeah, there's a stabbing. So the stabbing, if you followed this chronologically yesterday, like you knew of the tragedy in Hopkins, and then all of a sudden, a few hours later, we learned that there had been a stabbing in Burnsville. But authorities say the stabbing preceded, the stabbing of the elderly family member in Burnsville preceded what took place in Hopkins, which would make sense that there was something in the morning. He started his rampage there and then would have bolted up to Hopkins to do the unimaginable. I mean, it just, obviously the father of two daughters, you can't even imagine. But that there may be some answers in that house. I haven't seen any court documents yet out of Burnsville and Dakota County. So it's two jurisdictions. Obviously, investigators will work together on this because where he had been obviously he was staying with his mother for some reason. He's 41. Right. They're married for years. Yeah. What's up with that? She's closing the business. She acknowledges relationship troubles. You can kind of feel that there's something there, but again, on paper, there's nothing in the courts to suggest that, that the next step had been taken. Divorce paper was filed, restraining orders. There was none of that.
We appreciate the update today. I know your report you'll be all over Fox 9 pretty much all evening, I'm sure, with the very latest. We appreciate you and the reporting. Thanks, man, as always.
Well, yeah, thank you, Dan.
Appreciate it. That is Paul Blume. Will you put him on hold? I'm having some problems with my cursor in here. Of course, Mr. Blume is Fox 9 and has joined us over the years on a lot of breaking stories and some political stories as well. How about we just make this almost like the 46 break a little bit late, because our in-studio guest for the 4 o'clock hour is here. We will return to the toy department with him, and we'll continue to keep an eye on any new developments in that Hopkins tragedy that broke yesterday. Chris Hine exit interview, basically, because he's not covering the Minnesota Timberwolves much longer. In fact, I think he's wrapping up Friday, going on to maybe bigger and even better things, if that's possible, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He'll give us all the details on that, and we'll do a little reflecting on his time covering the Timberwolves and at the Star Tribune. Stay tuned. That's coming up next.
You're listening to Barreiro on the Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY Traffic Center.